when you're factoring when your a value is 1, meaning there's no coefficient in front of the x squared, it's really simple. Your steps to this are to make an x, and on the top, you're going to do a times c, so it's going to multiply to that, and on the bottom, it's going to be your b value, and it's going to add or subtract to that. So this is kind of like a puzzle. It's kind of fun. So when you look at this, you're making your x. A times c in this case is 1 times 24. So it has to multiply to 24. Then on the bottom is negative 10. So it has to add to negative 10. So what I would do is make a list of things that give you 24. So things that give you 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6, and that's it. So we want to know which one of these are going to add up to negative 10 and multiply to negative or to a positive 24. Well, the only ones that add up to negative 10 are this one and this one. We could do both of those, but we need it to multiply to a positive, meaning we need both of them to be negative. So negative 4 and negative 6. If you try to do 12 and negative 2, you would end up multiplying to a negative 24. So your answer to this is to write it as x minus 4 and x minus 6. And then we could go into solving these by setting them equal to 0. But right now what we're just looking at is just how to factor those. Okay, so our second one, we're making our x. A times c is these two, so negative 25. And our b value in this case is 0. There is no b value. So it has to multiply to negative 25, and it has to add to 0. Well, what's going to do that? 5 minus 5. So your answer to this is x plus 5 and x minus 5. Okay, same thing. This one has to multiply to negative 40 and add to 3. So if you're starting to get the hang of this, you could just probably do this in your head. But if not, you can make a list. So 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, 5 and 8. And then let's look and see, do I have any of these things that add up to give me 3? Well, yeah, 8 minus 5 is going to give me 3. So your answer to this is x plus 8 and x minus 5. Okay, doing the same thing here. So this one multiplies to negative 3, adds to negative 2. So the only things that multiply to 3 are 3 and 1. So I know it has to be 3 and 1. So I just have to decide how to get negative 2. Well, I'm going to get that by making my 3 negative. So I have x minus 3 and x plus 1. Okay, same thing here. It has to multiply to negative 81 and add to 0 because there is no b value. Well, things right away that add up to 0 are going to be the same. That's your goal, is to get the same. Well, 9 and 9, so a positive and a negative. So x plus 9 and x minus 9. Looking at this one, multiplies to negative 7, adds to negative 6. What does that? Well, the only things that multiply to 7 are 7 and 1. How do I get it to be a negative 6? By making the 7 negative. So x minus 7 and x plus 1. So in these, in this one has no c value in it, so it's not going to multiply to anything. So this one's a little bit weird. This one goes back to the last lesson. We were looking at those two, and you say, oh, there's something in common. There's an x in common, and what's left is x plus 3. So let's look at how we're going to solve these. If you're going to solve these, you're going to set each of these equal to 0, and just solve for the variable. So this one's already done. You can't move anything around. So x could equal 0 once here. This one, we're going to get rid of the 3 and get negative 3. So those would be your two solutions to that. So on number 8, we go back to usual. It multiplies to negative 72. It adds to negative 1. Well, things that are close and do that are 9 and 8. How do you make it negative 1? Make it a negative 1 is to make it a minus 9. So then you get x minus 9 and x plus 8. And if we want to solve these, we're going to set them both equal to 0. So x minus 9 equals 0 and x plus 8 equals 0. So what you would do is add your 9. So your first answer would be x equals 9. And then on this one, you would subtract your 8 and you would get x equals 8. And those are what are called your exact answers, exact solutions. Okay, our last two, same thing here. This doesn't have 3 parts to it, and it doesn't have a c value, so what I'm looking for is a greatest common factor. Well, n is its greatest common factor. You're left with n plus 7. If I want to set these equal to 0 to find their solutions, just like that. The first one I don't need to move anything because there's nothing left to move. This one I would move my 7, and I would get n equals negative 7. Okay, and our last one, it has to multiply to 12 and add to negative 7. So what does that is 4 and 3. How do I get a negative 7 out of that? Make them both negative, and that's going to multiply to a positive 12, just like we wanted. So here's our factored solution. And then if we want to set these equal to 0 to solve for them, we would add the 4 and get x equals 4. This one I would add the 3 and get x equals 3 as my two solutions. And that's factoring basics when your a value is 1.